All right, I'm going to put our faceplate on with the black switch on this side, the red LED switch on this side. 2 red wires here, black and blue here. All right, this guy's going to run 2 yellow wires up to the turret board, so we're not going to mess with him right now. But this one, we're basically going to do the blue and black wire all the way out here to the power socket and to the fuse. And looks like we've also got our final ground tab is going to go right here. And that is going to be also for our power socket. Tuck this away for just now because we want to get access to this and give ourselves enough run so that we can tie this into the turret board later. So this capacitor shorts between these 2 bars and then runs a little bit of yellow wire to about here. So we want something that we can wind around here. We're not going to hook it in yet, but while we've got easy access to these 2 lugs, we're going to go ahead and solder that up. So now we need to do back panel. We're going to put our switch in, and we're just going to put one of these speaker jacks over here just to keep it up and not flopping around. Alright, this needs a couple screws. I believe we are using the last of the 1/2 inch long ones here. Let's do green to our ground pin, or ground strap. Okay, the next few things we're going to do is we're going to wire up this capacitor and this fuse. So while we've got access to this, we're going to hang a couple wires off of this that are going to go this direction. And there is a resistor that goes between here. And then we're going to wire this jack and this wire here to this fuse. Also, this black wire here comes all the way from the choke, so we've already run that. We're just going to tie that in to this lug right here. Okay, so now we've got all that assembled. We're going to move on here to our second fuse. And first, let's go ahead and we're going to trim this red wire because it's going to go to a turret that is about, well, this one right here. So we're going to give ourselves a little bit of extra to maneuver, but that is that's the length we need for that. And earlier, when I said this yellow was the one that went up here, I was wrong. I looked a little closer. It actually goes to the fuse and then continues on up to there. So we've got plenty of what we need. We'll go ahead and tie that into the fuse and then tie another little strand up here so that it can make it to where it needs to go on this turret. This gray is going to go over here to this switch, and we're not going to get to that quite yet, but we will just tuck this down. Top of this is actually the red from the choke. So we're going to run that the same way we ran the black over to the capacitor. And it is the brown wire from our output transformer. I really should have worked on this socket first, so that's what we're going to go back and do. It looks like we're going to have a wire going to the switch from number 3. We're going to have a resistor here, and then another resistor coming off here, and then a green wire going out that direction, and another gray wire to the switch. Okay, so this is where our switch is. We're going to put this in here just so we kind of know where we need to work, it looks like. All right, now we got all that tight little mess in there. We can get back to our fuse jack. So this yellow needs to tap into here, and then we need to have another yellow that is long enough to get to here on the turret board. Okay, so if we snip that off, that should give us plenty. Right now we want to finish up the wires on the switch here, and the white goes to the lower lug here that is shared with this gray coming off the tube, and the red goes to this lower lug here, which is also shared with a gray that's going to go to this tube. So the switch is mostly done. We're going to tie it into this tube socket and then wire all the little bits off the tube socket and then go into the output impedance selector. All this stuff is really snug in here. So as you're putting things in place, it's really important to make sure that nothing is touching anything else. Probably getting about time to get some zip ties and clean this up. Now we're going to go ahead and finish out the little bits and bobs on this second tube socket. So it's pretty much going to be the same thing as we did to the first one here. We've got a couple of resistors that get tied in over on this side of it. These two lugs get grounded together and to the ground strap here. Now this ground strap is going to share ground with the speaker jacks. So once we try and do the output selector here, this is going to be really obscured. So we're just going to hang a little bit of black wire off of that. And there's two holes in the ground strap, so we will shoot for having the socket tied into the lower hole and then that other, the outlet tied into the top. All right, that socket's all done. Let's move on to our output impedance selector. Okay, so this is our output impedance selector, and it's a little different than what's pictured on the wiring diagram. Wiring diagram shows something with all the tabs on one side, and you know, theoretically you could do something like this, and it's pretty close. The real problem here is that this has got a flat spot on the shaft itself and a distinct orientation for the knob. And to get the knob to line up with the markings on the panel, it pushes all your input tabs to the bottom of the chassis, or top of the chassis actually, but bottom from our current perspective, which doesn't give you a lot of space near this tube socket. So I've played around a little bit with it, kind of thought about it some, and I think what I'm going to try and do is something a little bit like this. So my tabs are off to the left here, my output tab is off to the right because it's going right to this jack here. And then I'm going to go ahead and take a little file and put a new flat spot on the shaft so that this has a good place to lock in. And the orientation will stay right, respecting the labels on the back of the chassis. Otherwise, this is just really super snug in here. You know, very easy to like touch something else. It could be done. I don't think it's pretty though. All right. Let's see what we want to do here. Yeah, if you decide to do it this way, yeah, and I think I may have talked myself back into doing it this way. Just input tabs down, but we can probably tie them in and then tuck it in so that we're not trying to solder around that socket. Let's do that. All right, I think I've talked myself back out of it again. All right, I'm going to do like this. I'm going to put a little bit of a flat spot and then just reorientate the knob so that I have room to work on this. Got the turret board in here because we are going to run a blue wire from this middle input lug out to about here-ish, so we want to make sure that we've got space to do that. Now again, I have thought I had on record, but I did not. So let me repeat the brilliant things that I said in the previous iteration. So we've got the next thing up on the wall are these output jacks, but they make getting to our tube sockets a little problematic. So we're going to work on tube sockets. Now a lot of the tube socket stuff is really just hanging wires off of it so that you can get to the turret board. So we are going to go ahead and wire those up. And what I've been doing is put the turret board in place roughly, and then shoot the wire through the hole that it's going to go into so that I know I've got the appropriate length, and then go ahead and tie things in. So I already did one blue. This green is going to go to the next pin. And then once again, just as a reminder, because this got me already once, on the wiring diagram, the tube sockets in the real world are actually rotated probably about another 30 degrees. So don't look at the location here, read the pin numbers. So this is going to pin 7, and that's pin 7. And I'm just going to keep doing this process. These two get shorted, and then the rest of them wires across. This one's going to get a resistor. This one's going to get a little bit of a capacitor. Yeah, a little capacitor here. But this should be pretty much hang little bits of wire off of various things so that when we can tie them into the components on the board. All right, all of our sockets are now wired up. We've got all our strands and hopefully enough length that we can get to the appropriate places it ties in on the turret board. And it's time to start doing the last of the stuff on the back of the chassis. So we are going to take care of our sockets and our effects loop. Everything from like here back is all complete. So we've got plenty of leads and theoretically enough length to get us to where we need to go. All our sockets are wired up. Off camera, I have kind of run through everything and checked off to make sure that I'm pretty sure I've wired up everything correctly. Next stop, we will work on the front panel and get this capacitor tied in where it needs to go and give it some leads so that we can start work on the components on the turret board. If this is the kind of content you like, please like, subscribe, and we'll see you at the next one.